Good morning, hello, and welcome to Shree's Sunday New York Times Read-Along. My name is Neil Parekh. I am the executive producer and guest host of Shree's Sunday New York Times Read-Along. Our guest today is Elisabeth Goodridge, deputy editor of the New York Times Travel Desk. She led publication of this year's 52 Places to Love in 2021. She'll share the backstory and some of the highlights and give shout outs to the designers that were involved in putting this together, both in print and online. Sri Srinivasan is our host. He's the Marshall Loeb Professor at the Stony Brook School of Journalism and co-founder of Digimentors, a digital and virtual events consultancy. I'm the Vice President of Events and Communications at Digimentors, and we're proud to bring you this Sunday New York Times Read-Along every week. Without further ado, Sri Srinivasan. Hey, Sri.
Hey, Neil. Great to see you, and thank you, as always, for producing this. It's an incredible community that we have built over a 5-year period, and we're starting our 6th year now, and it's just fantastic. So thank you very much for all you do, and thank you to all who are watching. Tell us where you're watching from, please. And you can also tag a friend. They can watch live or later. So please hit share, retweet. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So please share with all your friends. We'd love to hear from you. Jonathan's watching from the East Village. Hi, Jonathan. Great to have you here with us. And everyone, feel free to ask questions because we have such a great speaker today. Doug Levy's watching from California, Neil. It's 5:30 in the morning. Incredible that he's here.
It is, and we want to make sure to remind people, let us know where you're watching from. And if you're watching on Facebook or on Twitter, make sure you click on the video so that if you leave a comment, we will see it. Other folks who are watching, of course, my mom watching from Hastings-on-Hudson.
Hi, Auntie.
Thank you for watching. We have a guest, Unikrishna, watching from Bahrain.
Hello.
The international audience that we have. Perfect for this week's focus on 52 Places. Diane Stefani watching from Margate, New Jersey.
Friend of the show.
Surprise guest, surprise viewer, my sister watching from Bellevue, Washington. It's early there. Amy, thanks for watching.
Yeah, hi.
Linda watching from Long Island. And Momokshu Brambad is watching. Patricia Freudenberg is watching from New York. And of course, lots of other folks. So please make sure to press play on the video and let us know where you're watching from.
And we are going to give you a chance to talk about places you love to travel. What do you miss about travel? Because that's the special section that's in that we're going to be talking about, and our guest helped put that together. And so we're just delighted to have her here with us, and let's thank our amazing team that puts this together.
Absolutely. We wouldn't be able to do this show every week without a great production team. Paula Kiger, Steve Taylor, Julia Weeks, and Carla Baranauckas. One of the things that we do is we have Paula and Steve watching in Facebook and LinkedIn respectively, dropping in links, engaging with the audience. If you have any questions, feel free to let them know. And thank you, as always, for helping us put this show together. And Shri, we'd also want to thank our sponsor, MuckRack, for all the support that they give us.
Yes, MuckRack is an awesome organization. Hope those of you who are journalists and PR folks know MuckRack. Please check them out at muckrack.com. And if you'd like to sponsor us, that's the way MuckRack does, please contact us. You can see our contact information right on the screen. Sri at Digimentors and Neil at digimentors.group. .group. That's an unusual URL. I also want to take this opportunity to remind everyone about Digimentors, our company. Neil and I and all these other folks, we do virtual events and hybrid events. So if you have a program that you'd like help with, we also make talk shows for other people. This quality of engagement and the way we put this all together, please let us know. We've done events this past year for 50 people and for 100,000 people. We bet your event is somewhere in between those two sizes, and we'd love to talk to you. Look at all these comments coming in, saying hello on Facebook, but I'm actually watching on YouTube on my television, says Miriam. Miriam's a wonderful photographer and friend, and Christine is watching from Brussels. Great to have folks from all over the world. This is almost like a 52 Places to Go, where everybody's watching from here. Stefan, good morning, New York Times family, and filled with wanderlust and hope. And that's certainly one of the reasons we asked Elisabeth to join us today. So let's take a look at the paper, Neil.
Absolutely. So let's do that.
And there it is, the print edition of the New York Times. And I'll just show everyone very quickly what the front page looks like, and then we'll take a tour of the other sections as well. Here's a front page story: as Trump falls, a party braces for pitchforks. Bitter GOP infighting, president's allies look to punish those who broke ranks. Neil, what does it look like on in print? Let's take a look at that as well. Let's swap that out. Let's see here. And there's the print paper. And this.
Here we go. Here's the front page. So we have that first picture, that display picture. Secret Service officers on Friday checked the steps of the Capitol, where Trump backers rioted and where Joseph R. Biden Jr. will be sworn in as president. What an incredible juxtaposition. If you take that picture that's going to come later this week with Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris on that stage, and put that with a picture from last week, it'll be very, very interesting. The lead, of course, as Trump falls, a party braces for pitchforks, as you were just describing. The rest of the page: before Capitol riot, thousands made small donations online. The cost of travel, food, and equipment. This was a coordinated effort. There's no doubt about that. Biden sets up a 10-day sprint on big issues. He's already lining up which executive orders he's planning, which bills he's going to introduce for the first 100 days.
Including canceling the travel ban.
Please. And he's going to cancel the travel ban. Absolutely. There are a number of things he's going to be looking at. This article, certainly for a lot of parents out there, parents fret as screen time stretches to months. This is something that, particularly for parents of younger kids, there was always the question, limited to 2 hours a day. As the pandemic hit and school went online, that was impossible. It was challenging even before that. So it'll be interesting to see what the impact of that is. Going along the age spectrum, for kids who are as little as 5, some of them are doing school online. What is that going to do for them? Other headlines: assault spawns new rally cry for extremists. How Twitter coaxed its boss on the Trump ban. Jack Dorsey wasn't sure that the ban was the right move, but there are several people who convinced him otherwise. And then they have several stories that they're teasing on the bottom of the page. A barrier-breaking family too. The first female Black and Indian American vice president brings along a spouse, stepchildren, and aunties who may change what voters see as politically palatable in the future. So that's an interesting take on the second family. Trump's image legacy of peace and styles. The magazine, The American Abyss, a historian of fascism on Trump, the insurrection, and the future. So that's what the whole page looks like. Shri, should we take a look at the rest of the paper?
Let's just do a quick glance around the rest of the sections.
Sure. So I'll bring them into the middle where the light is best. The at-home section. It's an interesting take, looking at everyone in an apartment building and at home. The caption at the bottom: we're thinking outside the box. We're watching the inauguration ceremony online. We're devouring shabu shabu. We're sharpening the kitchen knives and replacing the water filters. And once we have surveyed our clean and orderly home with a sigh of satisfaction, we'll cut, roll, and tape ourselves a handheld newspaper maze. This is something in the home section, which effectively replaced travel, and Elisabeth can talk about that as well. Has offered little games and little activities right in the paper. Origami is just one example. The Sunday Review, a haunting picture on the front page. Just take a look at that for a moment. The inevitable. Finally, the world agrees that Trump is exactly the man his fiercest critics said he was, but it has the reckoning come too late. By Michelle Goldberg, and that's someone with a gas mask during the riot last week. Just haunting.
Amazing pictures, yeah.
The Sunday Business section. Again, a nice dominant photo. They can't abandon the Bay Area fast enough. More tech workers and companies are packing up. What comes next? I know several moved to Texas from Silicon Valley. And then fear and overflowing tub more than hungry bears. To understand how alarming potential inflation could be, think about it in these 4 ways. So that's a article we'll take a look at. And then what else do we have? Looking around, this is the Sunday Styles article. 4 years of hardcore branding, soap opera chic, and designer trolling are coming to an end. What have we learned? That's President Trump and Melania, the First Lady, walking to Marine One. We have Arts and Leisure. A question, what do we owe the arts? How might the incoming Biden administration stage a cultural rescue? A critic offers a plan. Plus, around the world, the level of government support has made all the difference. And one thing that's interesting, I think, I'm not sure if it was the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Arts, funding has increased every year under the Trump administration. And I believe it's in the budget every year. He keeps talking about cutting it, but they kept increasing the funding. The book review, the cover is Here is the Fire Now. Looks like that's most likely a fiction by Denez Smith. And the magazine, this is going to be worth taking a look at, and we'll take the glare off. The American Abyss, that's a long shot of the riot. Looks like from the steps of the Capitol going all the way down Pennsylvania Avenue, if you can make that out. Trump, the Mob, and What Comes Next, an essay by Timothy Snyder. That's the paper on this Sunday morning. And of course,
Thank you, Neil. Great to see this.
We'll get
see
to
this
the 52
all out.
places we love in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll be spending time with that, talking to Elisabeth, who is the deputy travel editor of the New York Times. So let's bring Elisabeth on and say hello to her. And folks, please share this with your friends and family. And hi, Elisabeth.
Hi, how are you?
Great to have you here. I hope you've had a chance to share this on the various platforms.
I have. So I hope some travel fans are joining us this morning.
Excellent. Well, first of all, just to ask you, how are you doing through the crisis in your family?
Oh, well, thank you very much for asking. Yeah, we've been in Brooklyn most of the time, and my son is remote, and you know, we are very fortunate. We have not experienced some horrible effects that so many other people have. So I appreciate you asking.
Thank you. Sujana Chandrasekhar says, good morning. Last Sunday of the administration, or this administration, and lots of comments coming in from everywhere. We just want to remind folks that they can tell us where they're watching from and ask Elisabeth questions as well. Here's a big time traveler. Ron Thomas is saying hello from Dubai, but every week he watches from a different place during the old days. This time not as much.
Because he traveled so much. Great.
Yeah, he does. And Francesca says hello from Ardsley. And any names you recognize, please say hello to them. Here's Wayne Camadoy, who's art director at the New York Times. And
Wayne is the best.
That's great to hear. And he said there's an A2 article on the ritual of press plates delivered to reporters. He says that's a nice read. Stefan says, hi, Wayne, miss you on our shopping runs. And Stefan is a former New York Times photo editor for 20 years. Folks watching from all over. I see Ted's watching in Washington, D.C. Emily Guest is watching from New York. Folks, please jump in and post your comments. So tell us about that tour you just saw of the print New York Times laid out like that, so many sections. What does that make you feel like as someone who works there and is instrumental with?
I have the best job. I'm so lucky. I work with the best and most talented journalists in the world. I've got a great boss with Amy Vershup, the travel editor, who's been in news and features her entire career. There is something to be said. I've always been a digital journalist until about 6 months ago when I started working with At Home. But there's something to be said about holding that paper, especially on a Sunday morning, and just realizing how much you'll learn and experience and just enjoy every Sunday morning with the New York Times. And so, I mean, I'm a true believer. So if you don't subscribe, then you've got so much just in this little condensed little package every morning, and particularly every Sunday morning.
Sure. One of the things I like in the daily, they have those little ads from various people at the paper who talk about the value of subscribing to the New York Times. And it's obviously takes an army of people, 1,000 people to put together the New York Times. Let's talk a little bit about the travel section. You mentioned Amy, who's wonderful on Twitter. Everyone should follow her at Amy Vershup, the travel editor of the New York Times. You all got, had to rearrange what you were doing, obviously because of the pandemic. But tell us about the travel section and the team there, and what's been happening this past year, and what is the plan, if you can share that going forward.
Sure. So there was just so many positive estimates for the travel industry at the beginning of 2020. This industry was just booming. New hotels, slews of new opportunities, and in 2020 we were really expecting a big banner year. We have a small but very resourceful team of 9 editors, photo editors, reporters, and visual designers. And then, pretty much everything, there's, the news had been coming from China. There's a lot of shutdowns about travel. And then in March, the entire world shut down. So we quickly really had to pivot. A lot of the columns that are incredibly popular, we had to shut down because people weren't traveling, and also we didn't want to endanger any of our reporters and photographers going to places. So the very popular 36 Hours, which my very talented coworker Suzanne McNeil oversees as an editor, we had to shut that down. We ended up discontinuing the print section as well, which a lot of readers wrote, and were just devastated, but they were also very understanding and compassionate. So from there, we started doing what are the news and service stories that readers would need in this extremely changed travel world. So we did a lot of stories on travel refunds, getting back home. One of our reporters, Tarera Mezawa, did a huge story on about a bunch of Moroccans who were stuck in a bunch of Americans who found themselves in Morocco, and because of her story, the United States expatriated all of them. So the Times got results, the travel section got results. And then during the summer, we started shifting because people do want to kind of get out of their 4 walls. I imagine a lot of people on this call often feels like their 4 walls are closing in on them. So we started doing little stories about, well, what kind of travel opportunities are close to home? So here's some national parks. Here's a couple stories about road trips. And now, it's a constant, much like the rest of the news business, because there's so much news coming fast and furious. We're changing, continuing to try to see and be one step ahead of what readers need and want, so we can publish the stories when they need and want them.
That's great to hear. Thank you for that overview. I was hoping that the fact that you're doing the 52 places we love was a marker that things may be getting better, but we're seeing, of course, record number of cases, and even the Olympics are being called into question because they're supposed to start 6 months from now. Yeah. And there's, Japan is having all-time high cases, and do they really want people from 200 countries to land in that island nation is a question. By the way, land of my birth, I was born in Tokyo. So one of the things that we had talked about this year, because it would have been the year after the Olympics, and my kids would have graduated high school, our idea was that we'd go to Japan this summer, right. But it's not looking too good. What do you sense in terms, or do you get access to travel briefings and things like that from, say, the State Department, CDC? Do you have a reporter covering that?
Well, I do have to say, Amy was planning on going. My boss was planning on going to Japan as well for the Olympics, and Tokyo was in our 52 places list last year before everything kind of shut down. So at the New York Times, again, as I had mentioned, boy, I am surrounded by this best and the brightest minds in journalism and some of the smartest people, I feel, again, in the world covering things. So we have slews of health reporters, science reporters. And I worked in Washington for several years. I ended up being the day editor before I moved back to New York. So I was there for most of the Obama administration. And the Washington Bureau, which has just expanded greatly under this administration, is kind of just top notch and really analytical on and nuanced on everything that's happening in the nation's capital. So we have CDC reporters, we have health reporters covering the pharmaceutical industry, we have people who are specifically on vaccines. So we are, typically a features desk before all this, but we are now currently working a lot with kind of what travelers need to know in terms of CDC recommendations, travel bans and restrictions. So there's a lot that, what Washington is doing in terms of heightening security with airports and hotels. So we're really having to, as opposed to being a features desk and kind of sitting back, we really have to know what's happening with the news every single day.
I was one of the many surprising stories I thought in recent days was that Airbnb decided to cancel all its non-long-term rentals in DC. And so you're seeing where politics and travel and safety all intersect.
It's fascinating. And just to give a shout out to New York Magazine, which is another great publication, they did some interviews with Airbnb hosts last week who had people come in and stay in their homes January 6th. And it was a really interesting read. And once you're done with the New York Times this morning, that you should go check it out online.
And among the things they did was give them bad reviews. And the good news is that for people who had made bookings, hosts who had made bookings for this period, Airbnb is paying them in full, so that at least they don't lose out as Airbnb makes this stand. There's so many comments coming in and people saying hello. Evan Gonzalez says hi. I see here one of Italy's top journalists, Mario Calabresi, is watching. Hi, Mario. Great to have you here. And Diane is tagging other people. Everyone do this. If you have a friend like Diane is doing to Diana, say, just watch this. They can watch this now or later on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Let's see here. I think I saw an Iron Man mug.
Yeah.
That's correct. And what is your poison of choice in the morning?
I drink black coffee.
Always?
Always. Can't have, maybe after dinner I'll have a little coffee con leche, but this black, straight, no sugar, bring it on.
And that helps you with your day, I gather.
Yes.
Emily says, really enjoy at home and travel. What do you think of travel forecast? Could be 4 years, the agony.
So everything is uncertain right now. And as Amy wrote in the intro for 52 Places last week, we are really facing uncertainty. It would be great, certainly for the travel industry that has lost millions of jobs, and for us to really have a forecast on what's going to happen, but we don't know. So we're trying the best we can to figure out stuff and developments and share that with all of you. What I think we will see a little bit is a split between the people on travelers on their first trip. So we'll see a lot of people who are going to go back to the places that they love, maybe Paris, maybe London, the nostalgia tours. I can't wait to go back to where I had my honeymoon. And then you're going to see some people like me who cannot wait to check some things off of their bucket list where they haven't gone. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of dream and see where people are going to go once we can finally safely travel again.
And that's what everyone's wondering when that will be possible. Let's see here. Mark is watching from Durham, North Carolina, great friend of the show, and and here's Manuel watching from Spain. What is on your bucket list?
What's on my bucket list? Okay, so I have never been to New Zealand, and I have never gone on a safari. So both of those I would really like to go to.
All right. Patricia says, thank you for the efforts to keep all travelers as safe as possible. Pradnya says, I want to travel to just eat things, she's saying.
You are not alone. A lot of people travel to eat things. I love to try different foods wherever I go, because you really do, without kind of traveling the cuisine, you really don't know the culture.
Yeah, and here is Anita Ratnam, former New Yorker, saying hello from Chennai in India, and Laura Silverman says hello from Philadelphia, former guest on this show. And again, people are tagging their friends. Lotte is watching from Bhutan and says, thanks for all the great work. We missed the Times Travel Show. Bhutan is closed for tourism, but we will be ready to take care of all the pent-up demand realistically in a year or so, once people get vaccination and we do not have the quarantine procedure. Bridge to Bhutan is doing bespoke tours. So that's nice to see. And you really, as you can see, we have an international audience.
One of my bigger trips before the shutdown was to India, both north and south. And so it's great to see so many people. I talk about food, man, I want to fly back just to eat.
Where all did you go, and how long did you spend?
Well, I went to Kerala, so that was delicious.
My parents are watching from there, so.
Oh, hello. Oh my gosh, I had a great time there. And the food was so different from Delhi, where we went afterwards for a wedding. And again, I would go back to India just to eat. If I couldn't see all of the glorious stuff, it would be a disappointment, but boy, the food would be good.
What is your, now having done it, what is your suggestion in normal time for a tour of India that is, like what's the minimum acceptable?
Sure. So what I would suggest is not do what I did. I felt like going to northern India and southern India on the same trip was just too much. You really couldn't enjoy unless you really give it 3 weeks. Like one of my friends kind of did the whole tour and gave himself 3.5 weeks, and we were only there for 10 days, and I loved how distinct it is. And I think that Americans really need to realize that, much like the East Coast is so different from the West Coast, the differences in India are just extraordinary. And I also feel that there's so much popular culture out there that can really help understand. So even if we're not traveling right now, start watching some movies, start looking at cookbooks, start seeing what's online, because you can really get a sense. It's not like traveling there, but you can really get a sense about how different the world is and how different countries are.
A plug here then, thank you for that. Netflix, Prime Video, all of them have a surprising number of Hindi movies, Indian films, so people can watch that. I want to recommend my friend Vikas Khanna, the amazing Michelin chef, who has a movie out called The Last Color. It's on Prime Video, and it takes you to Banaras, Varanasi in northern India, The Last Color, and I recommend that to everybody.
I'm writing that down right now.
Terrific. And Jonathan Borstein says, my next trip to Europe will be to Germany to visit the Zeppelin Museum.
Oh, Germany is great. I actually studied abroad in Germany twice, once in high school and once in university, and I got wonderful exposure to that country. Again, very different. You imagine there's these monoliths, but they have separate individual cultures in different regions with different food and different traditions. So yeah, and of course with Germany and its history, there's just so much to learn and do and see.
You're so right.
In fact, right now, making a plug myself, I'm reading a book called Post-War by Tony Judt that looks at the economic miracle that hit Europe after World War II, and it's extraordinarily good.
And maybe that's one of the things that I've heard multiple people say, that think about World War II, think about what happened in Japan, and that people and human societies can overcome and bounce back from things that would have seemed impossible. And I'm sure as you're reading that book, that's occurred to you as well.
Right.
That's kind of a blueprint. If we can all work together, know what we're doing, follow the science, maybe we can all come out of this safely. Ron Thomas says, I want to travel for work again, misses all his travels. Debbie says, thank you for supporting our inner traveler till we sally forth again. I haven't heard that term, sally forth, in a while, that phrase. Nice. Patricia says, I had a reservation booked for Disney California. Unfortunately, it wasn't open, so trip was canceled. Now, I saw that Disney, at least California, is redoing its membership It's travel passes, the annual passes, and things like that. So they're all, no matter how big the company, they're affected. Of course, smaller companies even more so, and that's really something to think about. Stefan says, Elisabeth, if you could leave tomorrow morning, right off the top of your head, where would you go?
Right off the top of my head, I would fly to Greece.
Greece, okay.
It has the history, it has the food, it has the beaches. I would fly directly to Greece. And I would tell all of my family to come to.
Excellent. And you mentioned, there was a question here, is there a place you would like to visit that you haven't been to? So you said safari, so parts of Africa. We just went a couple of years ago to Kenya and South Africa. And then you said New Zealand was the other place you haven't been. And Pradnya says, I want to go somewhere with a beach and no internet access. What do you think of that?
A lot of people are like that. So many people are living their lives on screens right now. And as much as technology has brought us so much in the world, sometimes you do need to tune out. So there's nothing more glorious than a beach with your family and swimming with no screens. I gotta say, I agree with you, Prada.
Amy, Neil's sister, is listing all the places she went in 2019 and obviously didn't travel in 2020. What is your message about carbon footprint? Do we get a collective bonus of karma points for not traveling? I remember in 2018, I did something like 16 countries, 275,000 air miles, and I was told that I should be ashamed of myself. And so now do I get some, is it some karma for that?
So that was a very big debate before the pandemic, and it hasn't really abated. People are really concerned about the environment and leaving a world for our children and our children's children. That's not going to go away. I think that there's going to be a lot of really inward thinking about travel and your carbon footprint, and also what you can do and what companies and governments are going to be doing as well.
Thank you. By the way, our friend Richard Deitch in Toronto just retweeted this, and we have lots of new people watching. So let me reintroduce our show. This is the New York Times Read Along, where we read the print New York Times out loud on Sundays for some strange reason. We've been doing it for 5+ years. 8:30 a.m. every Sunday. You can watch it live or later on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And we have a fabulous guest. This is Elisabeth Goodridge. She is the New York Times Travel Desk Deputy Editor, and she led the publication of 52 Places to Love in 2021. She'll explain what that is in just a minute. And I'm Sri Srinivasan. I am the Marshall Loeb Visiting Professor at Stony Brook School of Journalism and the co-founder of Digimentors, a digital and virtual events consulting company. Please talk to us if you would like a talk show like this, a virtual show, or you have a conference or summit or anything you'd like to talk about. And please follow Elisabeth on Twitter. She's ELIS Goodridge, and you can find her on Twitter. So let me ask you, Elisabeth, your way of using social media. What is your attitude to it? How often do you use it? And how does it fit into what you do as a journalist?
Sure. So social media, again, is pretty extraordinary. Facebook was a way that you met your old high school friends, the college friends that you lost, as well as you could share and really learn about the world. I guess it all depends on how you use. Everything is good in moderation. I think if you spend hours and hours doom scrolling, it's not going to be good for your health or your mental health. However, you can really learn about the world, and you can learn about what your friends are up to using social media.
That's great to hear that. And here are people tagging their friends. So everyone, please tag a friend who can watch this now or later. And we'll be looking at the 52 Places to Love in a bit. Amy says, I asked my 5-year-old daily what he's grateful for, and he says being able to go to many places. We can tell he misses traveling so much. And this is, Patricia says, what we do on the show, it's much more than just the news, as you can tell. Sudha, Neil's mom, says, I'd like to go to Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, and Myanmar.
Can I give a little plug right now?
Yes, please.
Okay, so if you look in the at-home section this week, which Amy Vershup and I are overseeing, she's the boss for both travel and at home right now because of this new section that we rolled out after travel. after travel kind of shut down and we had to stop our print section, we started up an at-home section, which is all about activities and fun things to do at home. Well, this week on pages 6 and 7, we have a whole spread on how you can go to Singapore and I think 7 other places remotely. So go ahead and see what you'd like about Singapore. There's suggestions from Seb Modak, our 2019 52 Places Traveler, and Stephanie Rosenblum, who was a travel columnist for us for years. Thanks, NYT Cam. And that's exactly what I wanted to show.
That's awesome. So we're able to see that. Visit the world from your couch, and that looks really good to have all that there. Neil, we can't hear you if you're talking. And let's see.
There we go.
Yeah.
There's Quebec City, Hawaii, Tokyo, Paris, and there's Tunis. And then you mentioned Singapore, Cartagena, Dakar, Senegal down here. It's a nice mix. Not sure what to do with yet another night at home? You could explore the culture of one of these 8 places with site-specific tips on how to visit virtually, cook regional cuisine, hear local music, and more.
Here is Florence Lowe watching from Dallas. I love Kerala too and the food. I'm from Northeast India. Let me invite both of you to visit there next time you're in India. So that's an important point, that there is another part of India that we don't talk about often, which is Northeast India, which is a different culture. And she's watching on LinkedIn. So we have people watching everywhere.
Right.
And Mark says, I remember getting Condé Nast and other magazines so I could visit places I had not been to. Sarojini says, good morning from Central Florida. I can't wait to go somewhere to see snow again. So the snow people want to go to a beach. The beach people want to go to see snow. That's life, isn't it?
And really, travel allows you to expose yourself to different places and different cultures that you're not, and then just kind of broaden your world. It's pretty amazing. Oh, thank you, Linda. I'm so pleased to see that at-home note. Thank you.
Yeah, she says it's brilliant. Nirja says, my husband and I celebrated our 30th wedding anniversary in 2020, staying home and ordering in. Hopefully in 2021, we can celebrate our 31st watching the sunset in Europe. What a great thought. Susan says, good morning from sunny Connecticut. And then Mark wonders about cruises and single ski trips, reunion trips. When will these things come back? And when would you feel comfortable going on a cruise yourself?
Sure. Hey, so I'd like to say a lot of these travel groups are trying to pivot. And so, for example, you can book tour groups or hotels for just your own bubble. So that's one way that these companies, and again, remember, like, the entire world is just reeling from this. It's a historic moment, but the travel industry has been one of the hardest hit. Millions and millions of people. I think 40% of the workforce has been laid off. So a lot of these companies are really trying to pivot to find safe ways to allow people to travel. So that's one option if you want to go on a tour group or a bike ride or anything like that, is see whether or not they can craft you an individual program for just you and your bubble. Cruises. So cruises are, they were really a hotbed at the beginning of this because of just the natural situation of a boat. A lot of people in enclosed space doing a lot of activities that just don't lend themselves to socially distancing. We're waiting to see what happens. So what they need to do is take a bunch of test runs and see whether or not they can safely provide an experience. But they're in a hot spot. Cruises are really in a tough spot because a lot of what they offer, again, what I said, cannot provide socially distancing. And then, how do they make money offering entertainment that people want to go to while still adhering to all these health guidelines?
And that's certainly something that they have to pay close attention to as we try to understand all of this. Let's keep looking here. So many comments coming in. Mark says, Elizabeth, if I can borrow from my brother, Stefan Kaplan, you are welcome to come to my shows. He has his own show, so he's saying hello and inviting you. He's in North Carolina. Tell us about tourism within the United States.
Sure. So tourism within the United States, I mean, a lot of people are finding out that there's glorious things in their backyard. And we haven't really talked about 52 places yet, but one of the places that we listed this year is a small hometown in Connecticut. People are realizing there's beauty, there's culture, there's enjoyment in towns just over, the border, or just, for example, I live in New York, and last night we went to Long Island City and found a gorgeous Cuban restaurant. So there are places to go. You don't have to go on these wonderful places overseas just right now, because there's ways you can travel and be safe. If you feel comfortable, again, there's lockdowns, there's travel restrictions, there's a lot of stuff going on, but there are some beautiful places you can go in the borders of the United States.
And that's good to remind everyone. And of course, we'll look at the 52 places in just a minute. I also want to do a shout out for those of you interested in the travel business. Everyone should follow Rafat Ali and Skift. That's the business of travel. And he does an amazing job. Rafat is at RAFAT on Twitter, and Skift is SKIFT. It's a publication that I recommend to everyone who wants to understand what is happening in the travel business. So please check that out. Folks, we are taking your questions, and we also want to talk about the news. You saw the front page of the New York Times. Can you talk about how stories that are about what's happening with things like what's happening in DC and the vaccine and the virus, how do you decide whether it gets covered where you are in the travel section or in the news pages? And is there a clear division anymore?
Sure, that's a really great question. So increasingly, even before the pandemic, we were doing a lot more news stories and service stories. How you can get the most out of your trip to Disneyland, for example, is an example of a service story. So Amy comes from a very, very deep journalism background of news and features, and so do I. So it's been really fun. She was there for about a year before I joined. It's been really fun to have her at the helm of travel and really kind of reimagine this section with her and I. And then we have these editors, Linda Richardson and Suzanne McNeil, who've been around in the travel section, who are just wordsmiths. So it's been really fun to work with Amy and have her new leadership, and Linda and Suzanne with their long-term knowledge from the section. And then we've hired a social media editor, because social media is so important for travel, and a visual editor along with our photo editor. So what we do, so travel is about travelers. What do travelers need? Our business section will cover kind of the business of travel, hotels and airlines particularly. We have a reporter who's dedicated to the business of airlines. But travel is really about three different things. So people want aspirational, inspirational features. Where can I imagine or dream I'm going to go to next? What is the news? What's happening at Disneyland right now? And three, what is the service? What are the travel tips in terms of saving money? For example, Frugal Traveler is a very popular column for us. So travel right now is really about travelers. Again, we'll talk to our business folks, our business friends, we'll talk to Washington, we'll talk to folks in National. For example, Travel did a huge piece on road trips that ran in the national section. So when we write a travel story, the first thing we think is the audience. Is this for a traveler? And then we'll go for it.
That's how you are able to do that. And what is the Voyages section of the magazine, and how does that intersect with what you do?
So the magazine, it's probably a highlight for everyone on Sunday morning, is our New York Times Sunday magazine. And they, again, the New York Times has such a deep bench when it comes to journalists. Some of the best writers in the world and photo editors and photographers end up in those pages. So Voyages is an annual section about travel from the New York Times Magazine, and they offer really deep magazine stories on what's happening, the most recent news that's happening in travel.
And that's once a year they do that, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Folks, I hope you are following Elisabeth on Twitter. If not, please sign up at ELIS Goodridge on Twitter. Lots of comments coming in from all over the world. We're very grateful. James Baroud is watching, and he says, good morning, great show. And ever hear about this interesting site that lets you virtually drive around cities around the world? That sounds pretty cool. Drive and listen.herokuapp.com. I'm not sure if Elisabeth's familiar with it, but I think we would all be interested in that. So please check out driveandlisten.herokuapp.com. And Patricia says, James, thanks for sharing. First time hearing about this, grateful. So this is that community we have built here Elisabeth. And just like you have with your travel work, it's really, really great. Some small towns are using social media to highlight themselves. The small town of Warrenton, North Carolina is doing a great job of this. Shout out to Crystal, who runs that. All right, so let's take a look at there you go. Neil's already brought this up. This is Drive and Listen. And so I guess, Neil, do you want to just pick a city? Let's go to Amsterdam, I guess. There we go. So I guess this is using some version of Google Drive, maybe. Google Street View, maybe. I'm not sure. And no, this is not Street View, right? Because people are moving in this, right, Elisabeth? You can see that this is not stationary photos. These are.
This is a new site to me, and boy, is it fun.
Yeah. So everyone can check that out. So just, I guess, search Drive and Listen. So big thanks to James Barut for showing this to us. Lots of fun. All right, let's get back. We have about 45 minutes with you, a little less than that. We want to get to that 52 places to go. First, can you set that up for us? What was the history of 52 places to go? And then you changed the name for this year. You did get in last year.
We changed everything this year.
Right,
So
of course. And last year, I just want to do a shout out to Amy and to Seb, because Neil, and I was so jealous, I was in India, so I wasn't able to participate, but Neil got to go to Amy's home and read the Sunday paper with her and Seb Modak, who was the 2019 Places to Go person and the correspondent, and they had such a great time. So if you can set it up for us, tell us what it was and what it is this year and what people can see. Neil will bring it up on in the camera as well, and I'll bring on the digital version. And there are basically two ways to experience this, in print and online.
Sure, yeah. Particularly with the Sunday read along, I have very big shoes to fill, because Amy and Seb were talking about kind of the wonderful travel. So that really kind of gets to the point of where we were with 52 places this year. So every January we publish a beautiful, lush, photography-filled section encouraging people to go, either staying on their, in their armchair and going with our section, or, saying, I'm going to go to this place because New York Times suggested it. The 52 places list was based on kind of new things that were happening in the travel world. Maybe a new museum opening up in Cairo, maybe the Olympics in Tokyo. So we were really stuck. As I said, in March, travel ground to a halt. Everybody knows that. You probably had to deal with refunds or at least disappointment as the world just kind of reeled from this horribleness of the pandemic. So what do we do about features? We had cut back on a lot of columns. We ended up, ending our print section. So what do we do with 52 places? Well, instead of doing a lush broadsheet section, we decided to turn to our readers and do a tabloid section online and kind of a more scrapbooky approach on digital, to say, okay, we're not going to encourage people to find places to go. We're going to ask people to talk about where they went and how it really changed them. So we got more than 2,000 responses, 2,023 to be exact, from people from all over the world, which shows, the expanse that the New York Times has across the world, and also shows how our readers have been so many places, like Australia, this mountain range. When do you see a picture from with snow right there in Australia? So 52 places, we had more than 2,000 submissions, and we had to really go through all of them to make a nice mix of sharing the 52 places to love. And it goes back to how we really have this wonderful relationship with our readers. They've traveled, they have been inspired, transformed, and then they can write beautiful prose and take beautiful photographs to demonstrate their experience. So that's what we did. We packaged it up, and it's kind of just a lovely gesture to how much we rely on our readers and how they really helped us out with this project.
That's great to know.
If
Neil, can we get some close-ups of those? Can we get some?
These are all reader submissions. These are all reader photographs as well?
They're all reader photographs, reader submissions, and we went through and really wanted a mix of geography and also how travel changed you. So there's a lot about, going back to your family roots, like a entry on Romania, really finding out who you are, the first little glimpse of independence, which is what a woman experienced going to Costa Rica. And then just this one is one of my favorites. Do you see it? Could you focus in on the left? So this was a village much like Mesa Verde, but in Burkina Faso. And this was a Peace Corps volunteer who could you just imagine walking around something like Mesa Verde in Burkina Faso? So it's stuff like this that I'm getting shivers just thinking about the experience she must have had with her friend walking around this 14th century village. And just the glorious color and light and smells.
That's awesome.
Some of these photographs, I just want to say, readers submitted, but they're incredible.
Exactly.
This is from Washington State, where I used to live. The Methil Valley, just absolutely gorgeous. And it's probably, I'm guessing Mount Baker, but that might not be. I wonder what that is. But yeah, just absolutely gorgeous photographs.
Yeah, and this was an example where she visited so much, it just got into her soul that she ended up selling her house and moving there permanently.
Yeah.
So how do you whittle down 2,252?
Great question. So this was where Phaedra Brown, our photo editor, really helped us. We get, for example, like London touches a lot of people, Paris touches a lot of people. So we whittled it down by the power of their prose and their power of their photography, and whether or not it was maybe a little bit unique. So we have 2 entries from London. One is the parks in South London and how they were just such a refuge for people during lockdown. And then we have another one about a church called St. James the Less, where a woman who was studying abroad in NYU, in an NYU program, and just how she walked into this church and just immediately felt like home. She had never been there before, but all of a sudden it reminded her of hot tea and cozy fireplaces. And it gets back to like our readers. My God, they're so good with words. And look at these pictures. Look at this place in India.
Yeah, the Kataro Valley.
Yeah,
Kataro of Kalia Dro.
We were.
It's actually, it looks like it's in Gujarat.
Yeah, it's one of those places that's just unbelievable in how the world is like outer space sometimes, but it's right in India.
It's from Varun Suchde of Bhuj, India, in Gujarat, not far from my mother's hometown, Jamnagar. I actually went to Bhuj after the earthquake back in 2000. That's incredible.
Look, just look at those photographs.
Stefan says, so many great photos from readers. What beautiful contributions.
100% Phaedra is such a good photo editor. There's no way we could have taken this approach, and the entire section each day, each week would never be the same without Phaedra's eye.
Let's get the full name so that everyone knows.
Sure, yeah, it's Phaedra Brown is our photo editor, and she, again, one of those folks that has been with travel for years and really has this depth of knowledge of what we've covered before, what a reader wants, and just her eye. Look at these photographs that she helped edit.
Yeah,
they
look great.
Sorry, Shri, that's a picture of the Tappan Zee Bridge in New York. Not the Governor Mario Cuomo Bridge, as some people will call it. About 20 minutes from my hometown, Hastings-on-Hudson, New York. So it's really interesting to see that difference, Elisabeth, in terms of as an individual. There are some places that I've been to that I have a connection to, but I don't remember, Westchester, New York, the Tappan Zee ever making a 52 places list as an exotic place to go to, but here it is in the list because it's real and it's local and it's a reader favorite.
And that allowed us, taking this different approach this year, talking to readers, allowed us to really highlight places that perhaps we wouldn't have, like Haiti, and like a small town in Connecticut, East Haddam, and like the Tappan Zee Bridge and how important that is to that one reader. So I'd like to just give a little shout out to the readers. After we published this, we were, how would they take this approach? It's so different from our earlier approaches, traditionally. And people have written such nice comments saying how they really liked hearing from readers.
And this is the closing.
Could I actually talk a little bit about this retired geologist?
Please, Kerry Dozak, right?
Yeah. So Kerry is a retired geologist, and when she was growing up in Queens, her father was a Pan Am mechanic, and because of that, they could fly all over the world. So she has some glorious photographs of her from there, and that's my favorite one. She's wearing these yellow bell bottoms in 1969 in front of St. Petersburg. So we ended with this because she really, her entire life changed because of travel, because of the opportunities that she was given through her father. And she shared with us these memories and these gorgeous photographs. And so we really felt, because it just summed up everything that travel gives you, in this one entry, that we ended the special feature with her.
That's a great shot of Jerusalem. With the Temple Mount in the background, you can see the dome if you look closely. Absolutely.
So now we'll switch over to the digital version, but before we do that, anything else you'd like to say about the print edition and the design work and anything else?
Yeah, thanks for saying. So again, this was one of those things that I helped lead, but there's absolutely no way you could do it by yourself. And we had some incredibly talented print designers who came up with the idea of taking a different approach, the tabloid, where it opens like a book as opposed to a broadsheet, which is your traditional Sunday paper format. And I just wanted to—
Oh, wait a minute, just 1 second. I just realized that what you're talking about, that this is like the book review section as opposed to the travel section, which was traditionally the broadsheet version. It just struck me right now, yeah.
This is a broadsheet. See how it folds and it's massive. But the tabloid approach is like a book, and it's smaller. And so why our print designers, Mary Jane Callister and Tanya Dottery, wanted to do this was to give it a little bit more of an informal feeling, because it's from our readers, and we really wanted to set it apart with how different it was from years past. So that's why it's in this format. And just look at these beautiful illustrations. You can almost imagine someone jotting down a little illustration because they were so inspired from their travel. So it's really gorgeous. So our print designers, again, so lucky working with such talented folks. So I wanted to just call it out that it's a very different section, and boy, they made it look fantastic.
Roderick Mills has the credit on the cover.
Yeah, so we had folks who did illustrations. We had folks that did the maps. As well as, and so I would really like to give a shout out. And you know, you get a lot of folks who have bylines in the paper, or perhaps are star reporters and stuff, but there's a tremendous amount of people who work to put this paper out each day, that it couldn't be the glorious excellence it is without these folks who really might not want the attention or the publicity, but it would never be the same quality, the same creativity. Yeah. Oh, Tom Jolly, you're the best. Thanks for showing up.
The print editor of the New York Times, who has been on the show multiple times, including 2 years ago when Neil and I drove up to his house and we read the print New York Times with bagels brought by Carla Baranauckas, former New York Times national copy chief. And that was just an amazing highlight to read the paper with the print editor.
Just to clarify, Sheree, sorry to step on you, just to clarify, Tom invited us to drive up to his house.
We didn't just show up.
We show up Sunday morning.
And Tom is amazing on Twitter. One of the things he does is he tweets the next day's print front page.
Right.
So if you are a news geek like many of us, you should follow him just for that. Here is Andrea saying, congrats on this approach, Elizabeth. And I'm curious, do you think you got... I also feel like it's more of a keepsake this way. Is there any reason you wouldn't consider doing this for all 52 places in the future?
I mean, honestly, I have no idea what January of next year is going to look like. So.
True. But it feels like this is something that you're more likely to keep. I feel that way anyway.
Well, everyone should keep every section.
Yeah, of course. Let's just look at some of the other comments. Diana says, traveling is one of the biggest things I miss since being in lockdown. Such beautiful photos. And Diana's watching on the West Coast. Thank you, Diana, for all you do. Lippy says, greetings from Manhattan. Love travel and photography. Thank you so much. Dr. Lippy Roy, who has been a guest on this show multiple times and is a medical expert for NBC and MSNBC. Sarojini asks, do you anticipate having a new 52 places in the next few years. So fun to follow them. As you said, you don't know what's going to happen, but
Right.
that was the plan anyway.
If you do, please let me know so I can start planning for our readers.
Exactly. We also had someone asking, how can someone sell to the New York Times travel section when things are back to normal?
Like advertising?
Like a story. Like, do you take freelancers?
We do take freelancers. We have a very strict policy, though. A lot of travel writers tend to get free trips, so they get to stay in a hotel for free, much like influencers will. And we really want to be transparent with how we recommend things and how our stories are crafted. So that's just one thing to consider if you want to pitch us a story, is that if you've taken any sort of freebies or taken any free trips or flights or anything, we can't work with you if you've done it for 3 years. Again, this is just being completely transparent and making sure that our standards are up to what people expect from the New York Times.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that. Let's see who else is putting up comments here. Sarah Khan, who is a contributor to the travel section, who's done multiple 36 hours and more, and who has read the paper with us on this show, says,
Great.
I have seen the print version, so this was great to see. Thanks. And I think that's exciting. And Amy says, this is my favorite read along this far. Beautiful tribute and ode to traveling. And Andrea says, why 52? As I understand, it's because of 52 weeks a year.
Yep.
And Miriam says, it's good to see all the creative contributions to the paper being credited here. And Diana.
I feel the same way.
And Diana says, what places does Elisabeth want to go in the world? You had addressed it a little earlier, but no harm telling us again.
Sure. Okay. So, one, we're really lucky we live in the United States because there's so many diverse places we can go within these borders. So I have got a lot. For example, I've never been to Glacier, so I really want to go to that national park. Then getting back to international trips, New Zealand, a safari, and then I want to go straight to Greece.
And when Diana, we had asked her, thanks to Stefan, where would she go off the top of her head without thinking about it? And she said Greece. Okay, so Neil's going to walk us through with you this section on the 52 places online, because it's a different feel. And you saw even Sarah, who works with all of you, she could see she didn't realize how different the print edition is this time. So go ahead.
Then it really gets back to the massive amount of contributors that it really takes to put out these special sections. So we had digital designers who were completely separate from the print layout, and that was Adriana Ramick, Jess Bald, Antonio De Luca, who again wanted to do a very different visual approach to this, because we were doing a different approach with the text and the photos. So this really, again, we wanted this to kind of look like a scrapbook. And you could see that there's lots of different layering here, much like you might do in a travel scrapbook. So if you wanted to scroll through and kind of see how
down, this is what you see when you go to the URL, and Paula and Steve will share the link again to the 52 Places to Love in 2021. As I scroll down, you'll see the images change behind the title. And then we asked readers to tell us about the spots that have delighted, inspired, and comforted them in a dark year. Here are more than 2,000 suggestions, here are 52 to remind us that the world still awaits. And see that scrapbook effect.
And remember, these are reader photographs.
And so you have an index here. You can see, all the comments pulling out from the side, which I think is interesting, and then reader photographs.
Yeah, so
when we link directly to this.
Yep, we have links to that, and then if you the reader photographs, but then we have little Easter eggs. So if you highlight over the contributor's name, you get to see what the folks look like. Like there's Owen.
Right there.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that it shows up in different places on the screen.
Yep.
Every time you click on it or hover over it.
Just a nice little bit of whimsy, because travel should be fun.
Right. So you keep scrolling down. That's an advertisement. And I think I have it blown up. This is the, so there's the Mariana Islands, Saipan. Again, that kind of angled with the pictures Really does look like a scrapbook.
Yeah.
And
So
then Megan West.
I realize now that none of this could have happened without our reporters. So our process for this was waiting for submissions, which we got, again, more than 2,000. And then we had 5 reporters actually call and speak with the contributors once they were chosen. One, to make sure that they weren't, a travel agency promoting their clients, but 2, because we really thought it would be fun to kind of see if we can get 100% of the contributor's voice. So we had Lauren Sloss, Derek Norman, Sarah Furshine, Emily Palmer, and Deborah Kamen do all this. And again, they just did a wonderful professional job making sure these contributions really had some polish and shine, and that they also kind of flowed with the other 51 entries. So shout out to those writers, because we couldn't have done it without you. And it takes, again, these special projects take a lot of people and a lot of organization, and they were all really great to work with.
And here's the interesting thing between print and online. We always talk about the power of print, that with the print paper, there's serendipity. You could be flipping through different sections and just happen to fall upon an article that catches your interest. Whereas usually online, you're looking for specific sections. You might search for a term. You might get there from a social media post, etc. But I want to pause here because this is in reviewing this with you. I didn't see it in the print paper because we were just kind of flipping through it quickly. But this article about the Camino de Santiago, Spain, and that reminds me, and I'll bring Shri on as well, that reminds me of Jim Dwyer, the longtime Pulitzer Prize winning columnist for New York Times and Newsday. We did a memorial for him, for his family and friends, and he walked the Camino, and that was a very touching moment. I forget who it was that walked with him, shared pictures from their trek, and his daughters shared their memories of that as well, and ended with Bon Camino, which was just very powerful. So to see this in print and to see another reader's perspective on that and experience with it is very, very touching.
Yeah.
Here's Diana saying the print and online versions offer something entirely different from each other. For me, California doesn't get our print copies until a bit later in the day. I can't wait to see the print version later.
Okay, but this was last week. We should note that this was published in last week's Sunday Times.
So a lot of this particular edition, the supplement was in last week's print edition. So just people can know that. Amy says, one of my friends completed the Camino de Santiago on foot as well. Beautiful. And Stefan says, Elisabeth, I see being on many online and live stream shows discussing this incredible travel production you and your team have created. So inspiring, so engaging, and engagement is key.
So you can see kind of the variety in terms of locations. We have lots of different people from around the world, different experiences right in. But what we did notice is that there was a lot more remote outdoors places, and I'm sure that everyone knows that's indicative because of the situation we're in right now.
Wadi Rum in Jordan, I've been there. Actually, I think Pam and I have a picture with a similar background. This is back when we were living in Egypt. That's great.
One thing I want to ask you, Elisabeth, is about the importance of acknowledging that even when things get back to normal, not everyone will be able to afford kind of luxury travel or be able to go to some of these places. I loved your Frugal Traveler pieces and column. So what are you thinking about kind of the economics of travel for the traveler side? We hear a lot about it from the travel industry side, but what about the individuals and consumers?
Right, that's a very good point. So a lot of estimates about travel going forward is that the luxury world will bounce back first. Business travel might be a lot more difficult. But what does that mean about low budget travel? So we a couple of months ago, oh gosh, I don't even know anymore with the time, but Elaine Glusak took over our frugal traveler column specifically, and she is a seasoned travel writer who has been writing for us for years and years. And that's something that Suzanne McNeil, again, one of our seasoned travel editors at the Times, overseas. And Elaine will continue with this column because everyone should travel. It's an extraordinary, life-changing experience. And just this week, Elaine wrote a story about how frugally you can take over a hotel or an inn with just your bubble. Like it doesn't have to be for the rich and famous to do so.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that. Any of these you want to give a shout out to? Please jump in as you know.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut. That's not why the Connecticut small town got in. It got in because she really did a wonderful description describing her hometown and how she fell in love with it. And a lot of people use the word love. We have someone, we have a professor from UC Santa Cruz talking about her experience of going to the Himalayas, and the quote that she gave us, I don't know if you can find it, was, "No one ever told me the love of my life would be a place." And it's just like, oh my gosh, we got to include that. I mean, that's how you talk about, there you go. I mean, look at this. I mean, again, this one gives me shivers. It's so amazing how she just encapsulated what travel meant to her. And look at these photos as well, and the beautiful flowers and nature. So, yeah, Jody Green, thank you for sending that. So that's a pretty amazing one. And you know, it's people like stumbling across little beach towns in Peru and saying, I was just going to be here for 3 days. I stayed for 6 months. This was if you want to go back to Japan, this was an Englishman talking about being able to just sit in these bathhouses or these outdoor baths. And what it was like to sit and relax in these beautiful steam baths. Yeah, this is a really great one. Emily Palmer did that interview. She did a glorious job. So that was pretty good. Yep, thank you, Paula, for sending Elaine's Twitter. I appreciate that. But yeah, so we had some wonderful places, and I was really inspired. I can't wait to go on that hike in Spain. I can't wait to go to Cordoba, from a person who was born in Cordoba, Spain, and what it was like. So it's great stuff.
Tatachi says, this alone makes people want to subscribe to the Times. Question, is there talk of, or are you already using VR for the travel section? I know the magazine was doing things.
Magazine was doing stuff. They've been doing stuff for years. We are a small but resourceful team. But why don't I take that back to Amy, my boss, and we'll see. There's always discussions about what's the next technology and how can we serve our readers.
All right, let's see here. Another Amy, this is Neil's sister, Amy Parekh, said it has a comment here as well. So let's see if we can. I totally felt that way. I fell in love with a place when I hiked the Himalayas at the Great Himalayan National Park near Kulu in 1997. So great to hear her describe that as well. Yeah. And we have a question here from our medical doctor and friend Lippy Roy, who asks what you think of the mitigation efforts in the airline industry, you know, for safety and.
Sure. So taking a step back, these travel companies, airlines included, are doing whatever they can to make sure that people feel safely when they fly. Because if they don't have people flying, they don't have business, and if they don't have business, it's not good. So they're trying whatever they can to do what they can. So whether or not it's handing out sanitizer, keeping the seats free. So right now, again, it's a big uncertainty, but you just have to see. I mean, this is a catastrophic year for airlines, worse than 9/11, worse than the Great Recession combined. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Okay, Debbie has a suggestion. She says she wants you to combine the food and travel section sometime so we can get more ethnic cuisine. I think the at-home section is a little bit like that. You have food and you have travel in there. But, she's thinking of like a crossover series.
Well, and sometimes, you know, food does. I mean, we've sent reporters to Alaska from the food section about fish. So yeah, it's true. People love to travel to eat.
Great. We only have a few more minutes left with Elisabeth here. Please, everyone, follow her on Twitter. She's ELIS Goodridge on Twitter, and please ask her your travel questions. And one of the things that I want to ask is when people ask you about travel and the impact that the New York Times can have on a place, a location, how do you think about the carbon footprint you're putting into driving people to all these places or sending people to these places, and the impact on a small hotel or a small town if thousands of people come because of the New York Times?
So first, I just want to take a step back and really talk about people's health and safety, because we are definitely in a life-changing event with this pandemic, and it's affected almost every aspect of people's lives. So I just really want to talk about making sure that people feel safe and comfortable while they travel, whether or not they have the vaccine or whether or not they have any other conditions to worry about. But really, what's your personal, what is your personal comfort level is what I was trying to say. And then again, we have to consider the climate with everything we do. I mean, a couple of years ago, we created a climate desk separate from the science section to make sure that we were covering the stories that the world needed to know about, because climate change is such a big deal. Again, I feel like much like the pandemic, the climate might affect many aspects, if not all of our aspects of our lives. So that's something that the travel desk really takes seriously, is how much climate change is going to affect what we do and how we cover it. So with the pandemic, there's been a lot of focus on that and how to help people stay safe. And what they can do as travel slowly opens up, as the travel world. But then we're also going to look at, whether or not we need to really double down on climate stories and the intersection of climate and travel.
Thank you. Let's look through some of the questions here. Diana says, is there any place Elisabeth doesn't want to go? Not because of war zone or because it's violent, but just that's a place that's not interesting to her? Or do you think every place has something to explore?
So, way back when in journalism school, I was assigned a story about security measures on oil rigs. So this was after 9/11, and what kind of precautions offshore oil rigs were taking against terrorist attacks. And I could not care at all about this. And I was really frustrated and what a hard project this was. And then you just kind of dive down a little bit past the surface, and there's so many interesting stories about everything. You just need to know how to look and have the curiosity. So that's kind of how I feel about traveling. If you just dive a little bit deeper in the surface, you're going to have some wonderful experiences wherever you go.
Here's Linda's comment. This has been a fabulous show. Thank you, and stay safe, everyone.
Thanks,
Our friend Therese Steiner is watching from Redondo Beach in California. By the way, I'm just thinking today of California, how the virus is hurting them so badly. I mean, obviously so many places in the world, but California especially since they tried, Elisabeth, right? You know that was one of the first places to lock down in Northern California, all of that, and it seems to have all not helped. I mean, obviously it might help in some way, but it's still so tragic.
And if you think about how important tourism is to that state, I've got slews of friends, and my very close sister cousin lives in LA. So again, we're going to be watching a lot of what Newsom does in California to make sure he can do whatever he can. And again, I think I can't stress this enough. We are in an unprecedented time, and just trying to get through it safely and healthy. And then there will be a time where people are all vaccinated, but right now we are in an unprecedented time. We are in a historic moment that we're going to look back and say, holy cannoli, I can't believe we're in it. So that's I just wanted to say is that stay safe, do what you can, and then we'll get through it and we'll be traveling again.
I wonder if anyone's done a story looking back at the travel industry in 1918 and how it bounced back from that pandemic in terms of the cruise ships and, Zeppelin tours or whatever else was happening.
Exactly. I've been really interested in reading kind of these books right before World War II, where you knew something was happening. And I'm also really interested, as I mentioned, that I'm reading this book called Post-War about what happens after these cataclysmic events and how society rebuilds itself. So again, I think being a voracious reader helps people when they travel. So I recommend everybody just, keep on reading if you can't travel.
I see a comment from Doug who says California was crippled by the rest of the nation. And Doug and Diana agrees. They both have been on our shows talking about what is happening in California. Both are experts on public communication, and Diana works specifically on public health in Northern California. And they're talking about how travel and people moving back and forth from other states affected California particularly badly. So it's even more tragic when that happens. But it shows you what a small country and what a small world we're in. And there's just so go ahead.
It gets back to how we need a federal approach to this. The states are doing whatever they can, but just trying to keep up with state restrictions it's just crazy. So if California feels that way, that it's going to be a really interesting thing come Wednesday when there's a new administration to see how this is, what's going to happen with this.
And they certainly are putting in the right words right now and the right people to say that they're going to do a massive sprint the first 100 days to have the right impact. So let's hope that that happens at this time. Before we let you go, any final thoughts that you want to share, and also give a shout out again to the section so that people can watch it online. They can't get it at the store today, but they can certainly look at it online.
Shri, it's been wonderful. And Neil, thank you for organizing everything. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about travel.
Okay. And so what is your Sunday like in the pandemic?
My 9-year-old, we're going to take him to flag football in Prospect Park, masks only, but we're going to spend a lot of time running outside and tiring him out.
Okay, that's good advice for good strategy with a 9-year-old.
And let me just give a shout out to David Beard, who was my boss way back when at the Boston Globe. Thanks for coming and joining us.
Yeah, David is awesome. He is the newsletters editor of National Geographic, and so he gets to travel every day, as you can imagine. And he's a great friend of the show, and we just love David. So everyone follow David. He's at @thebeard on Twitter. He has one of the most unusual Twitter accounts, really getting at the heart of storytelling using Twitter. So please, everyone follow him. And with that, Elisabeth, we'll let you go and get to your 9-year-old and the rest of your day. Thank you so much, everyone. This is Elisabeth Goodridge. She is the deputy editor of the New York Times travel section, and she is talking to us today about the 52 places to travel. As soon as we're off the air, it'll play on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So please share this as widely, everyone. And thank you, Elisabeth.
No problem.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Definitely a great show.
So Neil, we're so grateful to Elisabeth for being with us. Let's talk a little bit about the New York Times Magazine. I think we want to show the special behind the cover video, but we can wait for that. Let's thank our viewers, and any other comments, Neil, you want to bring on.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Before we close, what we want to do, we'll certainly give a shout out to She's on Call, which is our 11 a.m. show. Shri will be producing that. It's hosted by Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar and Dr. Marina Kurian. And our guests this week, of course, are really interesting. The Student Council President at Harvard Med, and the Global Health MD PhD student at USC Med School, medical school and activism. So two
younger medical or two medical students joining them. Please check this out. You can find You can find this on all. She's on call on all on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn at She's on Call. Or you can on my channels. You'll see me retweet it. But please follow Dr. Sujana at Dr. Sujana ENT and at Marina Korean and at She's on Call. It's a fantastic show. They've been doing it for several months now, trying to explain what's going on with the COVID crisis.
And this actually started as effectively a spin-off from the New York Times read-along back in March. I believe we started with a medical segment on our show.
With Dr. Rupi Roy, yeah.
And it spun off into its own show. So it's been a great source, if nothing else, starting off as a great source of accurate medical information in a time when there was so much misinformation being shared about masks, about treatments, etc. So thank you, Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar and Dr. Marina Korean, for everything you've contributed in terms of our knowledge and understanding, not just of COVID-19, but other health issues as well.
One other plug I want to give very quickly is that my grad school classmates, Andrew Bleckman and Lisa Kahn, are trying to do something important this Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. They're asking everyone to hold a candle or shine your phone out your window, take a photograph to illuminate democracy, given everything that's happened in the last 2 weeks and last 4 years, to talk about the value of democracy. Their hashtag they're using is Illuminate Democracy. So everyone, please check that out and post that 9 p.m. Tuesday, the day before the inauguration, if you're watching in the States or overseas. I think we all take democracy for granted, and this is a wonderful effort. So hashtag Illuminate Democracy.
Absolutely, and we'll just find that real quick. Illuminate Democracy for you. This is the post. So we'll just share that and give people a view.
Thank you, Neil. And that's 9 p.m. Eastern time on this coming Tuesday. So everyone, please do that. And remember, this show is going to rerun live on all the channels. So you can share that with your friends. And here it is, Illuminate Democracy. So light a candle or your phone, alone or together, out your window on Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time.
And at Illuminate DEMOC is their Twitter handle.
One of the things you learn is that there's a 15-character limit on Twitter, and for your Twitter name, and so they couldn't get the full name on there.
Of course. And then we'd also like to give a shout out to our friend Stefan Kaplan. His Spin It Social Hour has changed times and frequency for the new year, but and this is the old card, I believe, but it's going to be next Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Nick Curry, Claudia Paul, Peter De Silva, Gina Moon, and Esdras Suarez. This show had to be rescheduled because of the events in the Capitol last week. So check out Stefan's Spin It Social Hour every other week on Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And then what we'd like to do as we close, Shri, as folks know, we've been showing the New York Times Magazine behind the cover video pretty regularly. And this week they did a retrospective of the entire year. They did an 8-minute video looking at all of the covers and the artwork that they've done. So as we close, we're going to play that video and let people enjoy it. If they want, we'll play the full length of the video, and we'll end the broadcast after that. Deborah has a suggestion of syndicating the show and having more spin-offs. Like Seinfeld, she's speaking your language, Shri, as a big Seinfeld fan. And Leah Chang says, thank you for a marvelous show this morning. Especially
Leah's an awesome photographer, by the way, and everyone should check out her work. Photographer, actress, director. Yeah, Leah Chang.
And she shared it on Twitter, so thank you for that. Our friend Chatachi thought this was amazing and thanked Elisabeth as well.
We should also tell folks that we're always looking for guest ideas for guests for the New York Times read along. So if you know someone who would be interested in being a guest, please contact us as well.
Absolutely. And you can reach us, Shri@digimentors.group, or myself, Neil@digimentors.group. You can also reach us on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter. So please feel free to reach out. And then with that, I think that we'll turn to the New York Times Magazine retrospective and let you enjoy that. Shri, thank you very much, and good luck with.
Thank you, and to the team, to Paula, Carla, Steve. Thank you all, and to our sponsors, MuckRack. Thanks, everybody. I'll say goodbye. Neil's going to play that video.
And that's our team: Paula Kiger, Steve Taylor, Julia Weeks, and Carla Baranauckas. So I'll go ahead and bring that video on. Shri, thank you very much, and we will get started. And right here.
From the New York Times Magazine.
This is a very special end-of-year edition of Behind the Cover. I'm Editor-in-Chief Jake Silverstein.
And I'm Creative Director Gail Bickler.
Behind the Cover is the weekly video series where we go behind the design process of the magazine's cover.
In this episode, we look back at all the covers of 2020.
Our cover story this week is about parole in California, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Rudy Giuliani. A look inside a high-stakes and pretty audacious new production of West Side Story. Our cover story this week is about the persecution of Uyghurs in Xinjiang, China, the relationship between President Trump and Deutsche Bank, a profile of the great artist Anselm Kiefer, our annual Future of Work issue. Our cover story this week is about the rise of originalism on the Supreme Court, how more and more single-family homes have fallen into the hands of large corporations. This week we have our annual music issue where we choose 25 songs that help define where music is at right now.
This issue every year gives us a lot of opportunities to make something unconventional.
Our cover story this week is a profile of Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. Testing. Sounds good.
Okay.
This is our first magazine that we've made since moving to a work-from-home location.
Not only were we trying to create this magazine, but we were also, as a staff, trying to absorb the news of everything happening in the world.
This week marks our second week of working remotely, but there are a lot of people in this country who have no choice but to show up for work, and our cover story is about them. Our cover story this week is a series of photographic portraits of healthcare workers who have been on the front lines of the staggering COVID-19 outbreak in northern Italy.
Her expression has a shell-shocked quality to it, almost like somebody who's been through a war.
The magazine this week is dedicated to stories and photographs from inside New York City's hospitals as the pandemic hit.
One of the reasons we chose the cover was because it really shows the life-saving efforts by healthcare workers.
Our cover story this week looks at what happens when the coronavirus comes to a country that's deeply vulnerable because of years of armed conflict. How COVID-19 has revealed the deadly realities of the racially polarized country that we live in. The problem of how to conduct a safe election during a pandemic. Our cover story this week looks inside a funeral home in New York City that's been absolutely overwhelmed as a result of this deadly pandemic.
One of the things we wanted to do was have impact with this cover. We felt like people would understand exactly what was going on.
This week we have a really special issue about the experience of quarantine.
These illustrations really get at all the things that we're feeling right now. Anxiety, boredom, sometimes insanity, the monotony of it all.
That's right. This week we have the money issue.
There's photography from the Great Depression where you had bread lines or soup lines. This is the modern day equivalent of that.
Our cover story this week is a profile of Attorney General William Barr, a roundtable discussion about what it's going to take to get either an effective treatment or a vaccine.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
The killing of George Floyd set off a series of protests that swept the nation.
And our cover story this week is about this question of how can we reimagine and transform policing in America.
The choice came down to whose voice we wanted to represent on the cover. We were drawn to this image of a protester elevated above the crowd, waving an American flag with the words, "I can't breathe" on it.
Our cover story this week is a really important essay by Nicole Hannah-Jones making the case for reparations.
When you have a serious message, sometimes something less designed feels more forceful.
Our cover story this week is an essay by Isabel Wilkerson about the enduring racial caste system in America.
Most weeks we try to create a cover that has an immediate read, but in this instance, it's something that you'd have to sit with and notice details. It's about emotion.
We began reaching out to contemporary fiction writers for new works that address this strange reality of the current global pandemic.
I often think that covers either should be really simple or super complex, and this one definitely is on the complex side. Our cover story this week is about public health.
Looking at the ways that a warming climate will dramatically increase the number of global migrants around the world. The story centers on environmental injustice, and in particular in the community of Gray's Ferry in Philadelphia. Our cover story this week is about the decline of the fashion industry during this pandemic.
We loved the idea of a pair of sweatpants just flying triumphantly on a flagpole. And also sweatpants are just funny.
And comfortable, let's be honest. I'm wearing sweatpants right now. Our cover story this week is about the tension between Trump and the intelligence community.
We try to give the impression of things being hidden or not getting the complete picture.
Our cover story is about immigration policy at the U.S.-Mexico border. An organizing group from Minneapolis, Black Visions.
Our cover story this week is about hunger in America. More specifically, it's about how the pandemic has caused a rise in food insecurity that none of us have seen in our lifetimes. This week is our annual education issue. The second part of our series on climate migration. Having a more immersive feel to this was important. It's terrifying. This week is our biannual Voyages issue, where writers and photographers travel around the world and take readers with them.
An incredible investigation into the false claim of voter fraud.
The profile of Puerto Rican reggaeton artist Bad Bunny.
The tension between this country's absolutist interpretation of freedom of speech and the spread of disinformation in a digital age.
Our cover story this week is about Palantir.
How over the past 4 years, the Republican Party has become almost completely identified by its loyalty to something we might call Trumpism.
Our cover story this week explores the economic impact of the pandemic on small businesses.
This week, our issue is devoted to the election. Against all odds, in the middle of a pandemic, more Americans cast a ballot in the 2020 presidential election than in any other in over a century.
This was an incredibly ambitious project for our photo department. There was a lot of uncertainty in terms of what role the mail-in ballots would play, so we wanted to really document the process in a completest way.
To tell the story of what we're calling democracy by mail. Cover story this week assesses the potential criminal liability faced by President Trump as he leaves office.
This week's cover story is about the efforts of conservative groups to win Latino votes, about how trees communicate with each other.
Which is a really nice respite from the news, let's be honest. It's true. This week we have our annual Great Performers issue. It was a year in which screens both drove us mad because we had to spend so much time on them, but also kind of saved us too.
This week's cover story focuses on Russia, which is uniquely positioned to benefit from global warming.
This week is our annual The Lives They Lived issue. This is always our last issue of the year, and it usually looks back at some of the notable and interesting people who've died over the past 12 months.
This year we knew we had to do something different.
So we documented 7 families who lost loved ones to COVID over the year during their Thanksgiving holidays.
It's been a year in which deaths and illness have really haunted us all. It seemed like ending with grief was really the only logical conclusion.
I think this shot just says it all.
So many decisions are made in the process of making a cover, from choosing the image to choosing the message. And this year in particular, just looking back at all the news, it's been very emotional.
It was an honor to do all these covers with you in such a remarkable year. I honestly can't believe we made it.
Likewise.
Also, kudos to the entire amazing crew at New York Times Magazine who make all these covers possible.
And thanks most of all to our readers. We hope that the magazine helped you make sense of this insane year.
And that was a New York Times behind the cover retrospective. I just want to offer a quick correction if you're still watching. This is the correct card for the Spin It Social Hour, where photographers share their work and journeys. Our friend Stefan Kaplan, a social media and visual strategist, is the host. The guest this week, it's Thursday, January 21st, is Richard, I apologize on the pronunciation, Bernabe, and he's on Instagram and Twitter, you can find him at Bernabe Photo, Bernabe Photo. So please follow him there, and you can watch the Spin It Social Hour. You can follow Stefan at Spin It Social on all channels, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Please join us next week for another edition of Shree's Sunday New York Times Read Along. Thank you again for everyone who joined us this week. What a great show with Elisabeth Goodridge. And we have Amy, again, my sister. Thank you, Amy. She appreciated the cover stories video. And a question from Theta: how does one see that again? If you're looking for the New York Times Magazine cover stories video, our friend Paula Kiger shared a link to that earlier. I'm sure she can put it back into the comments. And if you're looking to watch the New York Times read along again, as soon as we finish, you'll be able to watch this show from the beginning, wherever you're watching from, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and YouTube. Deborah says 52 covers very touching, and Patricia says profound footage. Love the New York Times Magazine behind the scenes, behind the cover. So with that, we're going to close this week's show. Thank you again for joining us. And on a personal note, the last Sunday before the end of this horrible, horrible 4 years under Donald Trump, the administration is almost over. My mom mentioned earlier, it's almost like Independence Day. We will see a new day dawn. It'll dawn on Thursday after the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So thank you very much for joining us, and see you next week. Bye-bye.